Warwick Castle is a medieval castle developed from an original built by William the Conqueror in 1068. Warwick is the county town of Warwickshire, England, situated on a bend of the River Avon. The original wooden motte-and-bailey castle was rebuilt in stone in the 12th century. During the 100 Years' War, the facade opposite the town was refortified, resulting in one of the most recognizable examples of 14th-century military architecture. It was used as a stronghold until the early 17th century, when it was granted to Sir Fulk Greville by James I in 1604. Greville converted it to a country house and it was owned by the Greville family, who became Earls of Warwick in 1759, until 1978 when it was bought by the Two Swords Group. In 2007, the Two Swords Group merged with Merlin Entertainments, which is the current owner of Warwick Castle. Location: Warwick Castle is situated in the town of Warwick, on a sandstone bluff at a bend of the River Avon. The river, which runs below the castle on the east side, has eroded the rock the castle stands on, forming a cliff. The river and cliff form natural defences. When construction began in 1068, 4 houses belonging to the Abbot of Coventry were demolished to provide room. The castle's position made it strategically important in safeguarding the Midlands against rebellion. During the 12th century, King Henry I was suspicious of Roger de Beaumont, 2nd Earl of Warwick. To counter the Earl's influence, Henry bestowed Geoffrey de Clinton with a position of power arriving that of the Earl. The lands he was given included Kenilworth, a castle of comparable size, cost, and importance, founded by Clinton, which is about 8 kilometers to the north. Warwick Castle is about 1.6 kilometers from Warwick railway station and less than 3.2 kilometers from junction 15 of the M40 motorway. It is also close to Birmingham Airport. History: antecedent and Anglo-Saxon burh was established on the site in 914, with fortifications instigated by Ethelfleda, daughter of Alfred the Great. The burh she established was one of 10 which defended Mercia against the marauding Danes. Its position allowed it to dominate the Fosse Way, as well as the river valley and the crossing over the River Avon. Though the motte to the southwest of the present castle is now called Ethelfleda's Mound, it is in fact part of the later Norman fortifications, and not of Anglo-Saxon origin. Middle Ages: after the Norman conquest of England, William the Conqueror established a motte-and-bailey castle at Warwick in 1068 to maintain control of the Midlands as he advanced northwards. Building a castle in a pre-existing settlement could require demolishing properties on the intended site. In the case of Warwick, the least recorded of the 11 urban castles in the 1086 survey, 4 houses were torn down to make way for the castle. A motte-and-bailey castle consists of a mound, on which usually stands a keeper tower, and a bailey, which is an enclosed courtyard. William appointed Henry de Beaumont, the son of a powerful Norman family, as constable of the castle. In 1088, Henry de Beaumont was made the first Earl of Warwick. He founded the Church of All Saints within the castle walls. By 1119, the Bishop of Worcester, believing that a castle was an inappropriate location for a church, removed it in 1127–28. In 1153, the wife of Roger de Beaumont, 2nd Earl of Warwick, was tricked into believing that her husband was dead, and surrendered control of the castle to the invading army of Henry of Anjou, later King Henry II. According to the Jester Regius Stephani, a 12th-century historical text, Roger de Beaumont died on hearing the news that his wife had handed over the castle. Henry later returned the castle to the Earls of Warwick as they had been supporters of his mother, Empress Matilda. In the Anarchy of 1135–54, During the reign of King Henry II, the motte-and-bailey was replaced with a stone castle. This new phase took the form of a shell keep with all the buildings constructed against the curtain wall. During the Barons' Rebellion of 1173–74, the Earl of Warwick remained loyal to King Henry II, and the castle was used to store provisions. The castle and the lands associated with the earldom passed down in the Beaumont family until 1242. When Thomas de Beaumont, 6th Earl of Warwick, died, the castle and lands passed to his sister, Lady Marjorie, Countess of Warwick in her own right. Her husband died soon after, and while she looked for a suitable husband, the castle was in the ownership of King Henry III. When she married John du Plessis in December 1242, the castle was returned to her. During the Second Barons' War of 1264–67, William Mordaunt, 8th Earl of Warwick, was a supporter of King Henry III. The castle was taken in a surprise attack by the forces of Simon de Montfort, 6th Earl of Leicester, from Kenilworth Castle in 1264. According to 15th-century chronicler John Rouse, the walls along the northeastern side of Warwick Castle were slighted, so that it should be no strength to the king. Mordaunt and his countess were taken to Kenilworth Castle and held until a ransom was paid. After the death of William Mordaunt in 1267, the title and castle passed to his nephew William de Beauchamp, 9th Earl of Warwick. Following William's death, Warwick Castle passed through 7 generations of the Beauchamp family, who over the next 180 years were responsible for most of the additions made to the castle. In 1312, Piers Gaveston, 1st Earl of Cornwall, was captured by Guy de Beauchamp, 10th Earl of Warwick, and imprisoned in Warwick Castle until his execution on 9 June 1312. A group of magnates led by the Earl of Warwick and Thomas, 2nd Earl of Lancaster, accused Gaveston of stealing the royal treasure. Under Thomas de Beauchamp, 11th Earl, the castle defences were significantly enhanced in 1330–60 on the northeastern side by the addition of a gatehouse, a barbican, and a tower on either side of the reconstructed wall, named Caesar's Tower and Guy's Tower. The Watergate Tower also dates from this period. Caesar's and Guy's towers are residential and may have been inspired by French models. Both towers are machicolated and Caesar's Tower features a unique double parapet. The 2 towers are also vaulted in stone on every story. Caesar's Tower contained a grim basement dungeon, according to local legend dating back to at least 1644. It is also known as Poitiers Tower, either because prisoners from the Battle of Poitiers in 1356 may have been imprisoned there, or because the ransoms raised from the battle helped to pay for its construction. The gatehouse features murder holes, 2 drawbridges, a gate, and portcullises, gates made from wood or metal. The towers of the gatehouse were machicolated. The facade overlooking the river was designed as a symbol of the power and wealth of the Beauchamp Earls and would have been of minimal defensive value. This followed a trend of 14th-century castles being more statements of power than designed exclusively for military use. 15th and 16th centuries. The line of Beauchamp's earls ended in 1449 when Anne de Beauchamp, 15th Countesses of Warwick, died. Richard Neville became the next Earl of Warwick through his wife's inheritance of the title. During the summer of 1469, Neville rebelled against King Edward IV and imprisoned him in Warwick Castle. Neville attempted to rule in the king's name, however, constant protests by the king's supporters forced forced the Earl to release the king. Neville was subsequently killed in the Battle of Barnet, fighting against King Edward IV in 1471 during the Wars of the Roses. Warwick Castle then passed from Neville to his son-in-law, George Plantagenet, 1st Duke of Clarence. George Plantagenet was executed in 1478 and his lands passed on to Edward Plantagenet, 17th Earl of Warwick. However, Edward Plantagenet was only 2 when his father died, so his lands were taken in the custody of the crown. He was placed under attainder, and so could not inherit the throne, by Henry VII, being held by Henry for 14 years in the Tower of London until he was executed for high treason in 1499, supposedly for conspiring to escape with the pretender, Perkin Warbeck. Edward was the last Earl of Warwick of the title's first creation. In the early 1480s, King Richard III instigated the construction of 2 gun towers, Bear and Clarence Towers, which were left unfinished on his death in 1485 with their own woolen ovens. The towers were an independent stronghold from the rest of the castle, possibly in case of mutiny by the garrison. With the advent of gunpowder, the position of Keeper of the Artillery was created in 1486. When antiquary John Leland visited the castle sometime between 1535 and 1543, he noted that, the dungeon now in ruin standeth in the west-northwest part of the castle. There is also a tower west-northwest, and through it a postern gate of iron. All the principal lodgings of the castle with the hall and chapel lie on the south side of the castle, and here the king doth much cost in making foundations in the rocks to sustain that side of the castle, for great pieces fell out of the rocks that sustain it. While in the care of the crown, Warwick Castle underwent repairs and renovations using about 500 loads of stone. The castle, as well as lands associated with the earldom, was in crown care from 1478 until 1547, when they were granted to John Dudley with the second creation of the title, the Earl of Warwick. When making his appeal for ownership of the castle, Dudley said of the castle's condition, "The castle of itself is not able to lodge a good baron with his train, for all the one side of the said castle with also the dungeon tower is clearly ruinated and down to the ground." Warwick Castle had fallen into decay due to its age and neglect, and despite his remarks, Dudley did not initiate any repairs to the castle. Queen Elizabeth I visited the castle in 1566 during a tour of the country, and again in 1572 for 4 nights. A timber building was erected in the castle for her to stay in, and Ambrose Dudley, 3rd Earl of Warwick, left the castle to the Queen during her visits. When Ambrose Dudley died in 1590, the title of Earl of Warwick became extinct for the second time. A survey from 1590 recorded that the castle was still in a state of disrepair, noting that lead had been stolen from the roofs of some of the castle's buildings, including the chapel. In 1601, Sir Fulk Greville remarked that the little stone building there was mightily in decay, so as in very short time there will be nothing left but a name of Warwick. Greville was granted Warwick Castle by King James I in 1604. In the 17th century, the grounds were turned into a garden. The castle's defences were enhanced in the 1640s to prepare the castle for action in the English Civil War. Robert Greville, 2nd Baron Brooke, was a parliamentarian, and royalist forces laid siege to the castle. Warwick Castle withstood the siege and was later used to hold prisoners taken by the parliamentarians. 17th century country house. The conversion of the castle coincided with a period of decline in the use of castles during the 15th and 16th centuries. Many were either being abandoned or converted into comfortable residences residences for the gentry. In the early 17th century, Robert Smithson was commissioned to draw a plan of the castle before any changes were made. In 1604, the ruinous castle was given to Sir Fulk Greville by King James I and was converted into a country house. Whilst the castle was undergoing repairs, it was peripherally involved in the gunpowder plot of 1605. The conspirators involved awaited news of the plot in Dunchurch in Warwickshire. When they discovered the plot had failed, they stole cavalry horses from the stables at Warwick Castle to help in their escape. When the title of Earl of Warwick was created for the third time in 1618, the Greville family were still in possession of Warwick Castle. Fulk Greville spent over £20,000 renovating the castle, according to William Dugdale, a 17th-century antiquary. This made it a place not only of great strength but extraordinary delight, with most pleasant gardens, walks and thickets, such as this part of England can hardly parallel. On the 1st of September 1628, Fulk Greville was murdered in Holborn by his manservant, Ralph Hayward, a gentleman who stabbed the Baron twice after discovering he had been left only £8,000 in Greville's will. Greville died from his wounds 4 weeks later. Under Robert Greville, 2nd Baron Brooke, Warwick Castle's defences were enhanced from January to May 1642 in preparation for attack during the First English Civil War. The gardened walls were raised. Bulwarks, barricades of beams and soil to mount artillery, were constructed and gunpowder and wheels for 2 cannons were obtained. Robert Greville was a parliamentarian, and on the 7th of August 1642 a royalist force laid siege to the castle. Greville was not in the castle at the time, and the garrison was under the command of Sir Edward Peyto. Spencer Compton, 2nd Earl of Northampton, Lord Lieutenant of Warwickshire, commanded the royalist force. William Dugdale, acting as a herald, called for the garrison commander to surrender the castle, but he was refused. The besieging army opened fire on the castle, to little effect. According to Richard Bulstrode, our endeavours for taking it were to little purpose, for we had only 2 small pieces of cannon which were brought from Compton House, belonging to the Earl of Northampton, and those were drawn up to the top of the church steeple, and were discharged at the castle, to which they could do no hurt, but only frightened them within the castle, who shot into the street, and killed several of our men. The siege was lifted on the 23rd of August 1642, when the garrison was relieved by the forces of Robert Devereux, 3rd Earl of Essex, and the royalists were forced to retreat to Worcester. After the Battle of Edge Hill in 1642, the first pitched battle of the English Civil War, prisoners were held in Caesars and Guy's Towers. During the Second English Civil War, prisoners were again held at the castle, including those from the Battle of Worcester in 1651. A garrison was maintained in the castle, complete with artillery and supplies from 1643 to 1660. At its strongest it numbered 302 soldiers. In 1660 the English Council of State ordered the castle governor to disband the garrison and hand over the castle to Robert Greville, 4th Baron Brooke. The state apartments were found to be outmoded and in poor repair. Under Roger and William Hurlbut, master carpenters of Warwick, extensive modernization of the interiors was undertaken. 1669 to 78. To ensure that they would be in the latest taste, William was sent down to Dorset to make careful notes of the interiors recently finished at Kingston Lacy for Sir Ralph Banks to designs by Sir Roger Pratt. On the 4th of November 1695 the castle was in sufficient state to host a visit by King William III. Francis Greville, 8th Baron Brooke, undertook a renewed programme of improvements to Warwick Castle and its grounds. The 8th Baron Brooke was also bestowed with the title Earl of Warwick in 1759, the fourth creation of the title. With the recreation of the title, the castle was back in the ownership of the Earls of Warwick. Daniel Garrett's work Warwick is documented in 1748. Howard Colvin attributed to him the Gothic interior of the chapel. Lancelot capability. Brown had been on hand since 1749. Brown, who was still head gardener at Stowe at the time and had yet to make his reputation as the main exponent of the English landscape garden, was called in by Lord Brooke to give Warwick Castle a more natural connection to its river. Brown simplified the long narrow stretch by sweeping it into a lawn that dropped right to the river bank, stopped at each end by bold clumps of native trees. A serpentine drive gave an impression of greater distance between the front gates and the castle entrance. Horace Walpole saw Brown's maturing scheme in 1751 and remarked in a letter, "The castle is enchanting. The view pleased me more than I can express. The River Avon tumbled down a cascade at the foot of it. It is well laid out by one Brown who has set up on a few ideas of Kent and Mr. Southcote." In 1754 the poet Thomas Gray, a member of Walpole's Gothicising circle, commented disdainfully on the activity at the castle. He has sashed the great apartment, and being since told that square sash windows were not Gothic, he has put certain wigwams with inside the glass, which appearing through it look like fretwork. Then he has scooped out a little burrow in the massy walls of the place for his little self and his children, which is hung with paper and printed linen, and carved chimney pieces, in the exact manner of Berkeley Square or Argyle buildings. Gray's mention of Argyle buildings, Westminster, London, elicited a connotation of an inappropriately modern Georgian urban development, for the buildings in Argyle Street were a speculation to designs of James Gibbs, 1736–40. Greville commissioned Italian painter Antonio Canaletto to paint Warwick Castle in 1747, while the castle grounds and gardens were undergoing landscaping by Brown. 5 paintings and 3 drawings of the castle by Canaletto are known, making it the artist's most often represented building in Britain. Canaletto's work on Warwick Castle has been described as unique in the history of art as a series of views of an English house by a major continental master, as well as the gardens. Greville commissioned Brown to rebuild the exterior entrance porch and stairway to the Great Hall. Brown also contributed Gothic designs for a wooden bridge over the Avon. He was still at work on Warwick Castle in 1760. Timothy Lightoller was responsible for the porch being extended and extra rooms added adjacent to it. In 1763–69, and during the same years, William Lindley provided a new dining room and other interior alterations. In 1786–88, the local builder William E. Borrell was commissioned to build the new greenhouse conservatory, with its principal ornament, the Warwick vase, recently purchased in Rome. In 1802, George Greville, 2nd Earl of Warwick of the new creation, had debts amounting to £115,000. The Earl's estates, including Warwick Castle, were given to the Earl of Galloway and John Fitzpatrick, 2nd Earl of Upper Ossory, in 1806, but the castle was returned to the Earls of Warwick in 1813. The Great Hall was re-roofed and repaired in Gothic taste in 1830–31 by Ambrose Poynter. Anthony Salvin was responsible for restoring the Watergate Tower in 1861–63. The castle was extensively damaged by a fire in 1871 that started to the east of the Great Hall. Although the Great Hall was gutted, the overall structure was unharmed. Restoration and reparations carried out by Salvin during 1872–75 were subsidized by donations from the public, which raised a total of £9,651. Advent of tourism. Individuals had been visiting the castle since the end of the 17th century, and this grew in importance through the 19th century. In 1858, Queen Victoria visited the fourth Earl with great local celebrations. However, by 1885 it would appear the visitors were becoming a nuisance as the Earl closed the castle to visitors, causing consternation in the town. A local report stated, "One day last week 8 American visitors who were staying at one of the principal hotels left somewhat hurriedly in consequence of the being unable to gain admission to the castle. It soon reopened again, and by 1900 had a ticket office and was employing a permanent guide. By 1936 Arthur Mee was enthusing, not just that these walls have seen something of the splendor of every generation of our story, with rooms rich in treasure beyond the dreams of avarice, but also that the rooms are open to all who will. The collection of armory on display at Warwick Castle is regarded as second only to that of the Tower of London. Through the 20th century, successive earls expanded its tourism potential until, in 1978, after 374 years in the Greville family, it was sold to a media and entertainment company, the Two Swords Group, for £1.3 million, who opened it as a tourist attraction. Two Swords performed extensive restorations to the castle and grounds. In 2001, Warwick Castle was named one of Britain's top 10 historic houses and monuments by the British Tourist Authority. The list included Tower of London, Stonehenge, and Edinburgh Castle. Warwick Castle was recognised as Britain's best castle by the Good Britain Guide 2003. Around this time it was getting in excess of 500,000 visitors a year. Heritage protection. The castle is protected against unauthorized change as a scheduled ancient monument in recognition of its status as a nationally important archaeological site, a historic building, and as a Grade I listed building together with its boundary walls, stables, conservatory, mill and lodge. In May 2007, Two Swords was purchased by Merlin Entertainments, who continue to operate the castle on a lease, having sold the freehold to Nick Leslaw's Prestbury Group on the 17th of July 2007. On the 23rd of June 2006, a £20,000 stained glass window was damaged by teenage vandals and a ceremonial sword stolen, recovered soon after. The Warwick Trebuchet. In June 2005, Warwick Castle became home to one of the world's largest working siege engines. The trebuchet is 18 meters tall, made from over 300 pieces of oak and weighs 22 tons. The machine was built with drawings from the Danish museum Middelalder, who were the first to recreate a fully functioning trebuchet in 1989. It was built in Wiltshire with expertise from the Danish Museum and is now situated on the river bank below the castle. The trebuchet takes 8 men half an hour to load and release. The process involves 4 men running in 4 meters tall wheels to lift the counterweight weighing 6 tons into the air. It is designed to be capable of hurling projectiles distances of up to 300 meters and as high as 25 meters, and can throw projectiles weighing up to 150 kilograms. On the 21st of August 2006, the trebuchet claimed the record as the most powerful siege engine of its type when it sent a projectile weighing 13 kilograms a distance of 249 meters at a speed of 260 kilometers per hour, beating the previous record held by the trebuchet at Middelalder in Denmark. On the 10th of April 2015, a thatched boathouse house caught fire shortly after a burning cannonball was fired by the trebuchet. It was reported that a spark from the cannonball had started the blaze, although a castle spokeswoman said the cause had not yet been established. Hundreds of tourists were evacuated from the castle, but the spokeswoman said they were not at any risk. The Daily Telegraph described the boathouse as historic, medieval, and dating to 1896, when the 5th Earl had it built to house an electric boat. Seasonal exhibits. Other tourist attractions include Flight of the Eaglers, archery displays, jousting, the trebuchet show, and the sword in the stone show. The castle is also home to the Castle Dungeon, a live-actor experience similar to that of London dungeons. Warwick Castle is the subject of many ghost stories. One such instance is that of Fulk Greville, who is said to haunt the Watergate Tower despite having been murdered in Holborn. The castle's reputation for being haunted is used as a tourist attraction, with events such as Warwick Ghosts Alive, a live-action show telling the story of Fulk Greville's murder. Musical events at the castle have included caroling, with performances by bands such as the Royal Spa Brass.